What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Scratch Agency podcast, hosted by Scratch Agents for Scratch Agents. This episode is brought to you by On Hand VAs, your go-to for client-facing, office-based virtual assistants. Their systemized onboarding process is key to seamlessly integrating VAs into your insurance agency. My name is Stephen Turnbull, founder of T5 Insurance Services in Clinton, New York, and I'm joined by my co-host today, the one and only, you already know, hold your applause, Mr. Sean Fitzgerald, founder of LAF Advisors in Long Island, New York. Mr. Fitzgerald, how are we doing today, sir?
We're doing great. I'm still trying to figure out, right before the podcast started recording, Stephen told us how he had 4 cups of coffee already. And for the listeners, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. So
it is 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. I'd like to know how you had 4 cups of coffee already.
Yeah,
was
sure.
it like one? Was it one big cup?
No, I appreciate it. I'll walk you through my journey. So let's see. Did the workout this morning at 5. Finished that, and some nice free coffee at the gym when you're done, which is fantastic. So I grabbed a cup there and showered at the gym to my next meeting, which it was at a coffee shop. And these were all smalls,
Fair
okay?
enough, fair
These were all
enough.
smalls. So my next meeting was at a coffee shop at 7:30. Had a cup of coffee there, obviously, and it was just their regular black coffee with cream. I don't know what it was, but it was the best cup of coffee I've ever had in my life. That was number 2. So I finished the meeting, finished it on the way out. I'm like, I have to just get another small of this. This is fantastic. Had that on the way into the office, and then we had 2 podcasts today, so I knew I needed to be extra ready. So I grabbed another one just real quick here out of the Keurig. So that's number 4, and now I'm shaking a little bit. Yeah, shaking a little bit and drinking some water. So if you got Michaela's number. If I just drop right here, just call her. She'll know where I'm at.
Sounds good.
But besides that, what's up at LAF, Sean? What's going on?
Dude, you know the whole deal. You've heard all about it. I'm going through a big rebrand right now, trying to figure out a new name, new logo, new everything. So it's a lot of work, but I'm trying to make sure that my team is as equally excited as I am about the name we choose. So Steven and I actually had a good conversation about this morning, and he kind of reminded me how important, especially in something like a process like this, how important just communication is. Tell them how you feel, and I kind of told Steven today, I was like, I feel kind of like my team might not be as excited as I am about this. And this morning, literally 20 minutes before the podcast, I had a great discussion. Told them, hey, I don't know how you're feeling about this. I feel like you might not be super excited like I am. Why is that? And we kind of just talked through it, and now we have a couple of new names on deck. So it's a very interesting process. Something I wish I did right in the beginning, but that's what's going on at LAF right now.
Well, I can feel the listeners on the edge of their seat just waiting to find out what it is. So I'll just casually try to force it out of you for the next couple episodes until we get
Sounds
there.
good.
But we're going to jump right into today's show. Super excited to welcome Danny Lawrence, who is a client experience advisor with Glovebox. Danny, thank you very much for joining us on the Scratch Agency podcast, taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here. We appreciate it. How are you today?
Oh, I'm wonderful. And that was an awesome back and forth there. You got 4 cups of coffee in. You can hear it in your voice too. It's
Just ready to go. Just ready to go.
No, man, I'm pumped to be here. I love doing podcasting, and I do podcasting myself and know what it's like to be on your guys' end. And it's also nice to be on this end as well.
For sure.
Well, if you haven't been the host of a podcast with 4 cups of coffee and you at 10 a.m., I'm telling you, give it a try. This is a fantastic experience so far. Danny, introduce yourself to the listeners. Who's Danny, the insurance industry background? I know there's a few different specific things we want to talk about, but as we always do, let's just learn a little bit about who you are and go from there.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been in I like to call it Indy tech space, so technology specific for independent agents. For around 5 years now. So I entered this world just by accident. I used to work over at a value-added reseller. If you guys are familiar with Insight, it's basically like taking a desktop and imaging the back with like adding SSD and a memory and all of that. So it's like adding a service. But I was like a project manager there. I had no sales skills. I wanted to do sales. So I had someone reach out to me over at Agency Zoom at the time. And that's how I first got in this industry. It was startup, right? Knew nothing about it. And she had basically said like, hey, listen, I will coach you through this and give you what you want. And that's how I got introduced over to Agency Zoom. And I haven't left. It's part of the first ever sales team there. Went through the acquisition with Vertifor. Had an opportunity to then join another startup at Wonderite, which was a phenomenal experience. I had the opportunity of being more involved with what was going on under the hood, which I had no idea at Agency Zoom. But at Wonderite, I was exposed to even more there. And then now I'm over here at Glovebox and have joined the sales team here. And it's been wonderful. I've only 3 months now in. So, learning the product and like how it's engaging with agencies out there has been a great thing to learn. But yeah, I've been in the industry for 5 years now, work with small, medium, large brokers. And, my approach is like, how do we fit technology into what agencies are doing today? I haven't been an agent, and I'd never say I will or have been, right? But I learn from people who have specific processes, and I just emulate it, man, and just and try to make others better that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to ask this question, Sean, before we take it a different direction. You just mentioned, I haven't been an agent, haven't been on that side. One of the things that I think is very interesting, and this is the first time we've ever had a conversation, and I love when that happens on the podcast because there's so much we can learn.
Yeah.
One of the things I think is interesting is how you just walk through kind of your journey in the insurance space already with the startups, and that much different level, much different beasts, but the same principles, the same feeling, the same wake up and grind, the same we need to grow because we need to have a business and we have to grow to stay alive is the same thing that scratch agents do each and every day. So what do you think is inside of you that gets you excited about being a part of those companies? Because for somebody that may be listening to this right now, that's like, do I take the jump? Do I start an agency? What's it going to be like? Like, what are some of those feelings that maybe you didn't expect of being part of a startup or being part of something bigger than yourself that you wake up every morning and you have to get this done to be able to push the needle forward?
That's a great question. And, originally it was like, I just wanted to get better at sales. I had used it as like an intro to like, hey, this is going to lead me to my next step in my sales career, right? I didn't necessarily care about the industry, just being honest. Now, being a part of it, of startups, I've grown to love it because I'm part of change. And, we always look for in our career, like, what motivates us? What's our why? And, money's great. I want to make money just like everyone does. I want to live a healthy lifestyle. But I also want to be a part of change in something that's bigger than me. And I feel as if technology is a way to impact a business's the way that they do business. And after speaking with a boatload of agencies, you guys can all agree technology, it's slow to adopt in this industry, right? But when you work with that one agency and you see the impact that you've made on their business, that to me is the reason why I work at startups, to see that impact that you make on that business.
Well, that's great. I think that's such a good, for agents out there, I think that's such a good thing to keep in mind when you're recruiting, right? So if you're trying to bring on a new team member and you're a newer agency, a startup, right, Danny, like how you were at Agency Zoom, Wonderite, and Glovebox. Listen, Glovebox is a beast. They're doing fantastic things. I don't know if you can consider them a startup anymore. They're pretty big, but they all have a bit of a startup feel, right?
Yeah.
And that attracted you because, like you said, the change of what you could do to the industry is what excited you. And I think that we have to do a good job when we're recruiting people to our team. They could be interviewing at the big houses, the Hubs, the Assured Partner, the Acrisures, all those companies. And how are you going to differentiate yourself, by selling the dream of how you can make an impact, and how you're starting from the ground up, and you're going to be a part of building something great together, not something that's already a big corporation that's already established and there's not going to be much change that happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, just to piggyback off that, like you touched on it earlier in this call, Sean, where you said you had a call earlier, before this podcast, this session, of like how you feel, right? You were telling your staff
Yeah.
how you felt about this. And I think that's important to build a culture, right? You're getting the lines of culture. The better culture you can build, the
Yeah.
more of a likelihood people are going to stay. Because it's not just a job. You're part of something bigger than that. You're part of a mission. They believe in your mission. I will say, Agency Zoom, wonderful culture. We met every single day. 15 minutes, we were remote. And as you guys know, being remote, you can feel like you're on an island. You don't feel like you're as
Yeah.
inclusive at times with others because everyone's so busy. But we met 15 minutes a day. And one of the biggest things was like, we would be honest, like, how do you feel today? Well, I'm not going to lie, John, I'm sick. Like, I don't feel good. Like, I wouldn't have known that unless we met in the morning. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to probably reach out to John. He's, going to be in his own world. Or, Stacy's like, hey, like, I had a bad day yesterday. And like, we're understanding of what's going on in their lives. And that creates that culture. We feel
So
we feel
true.
closer with our employees that we're working with. And then, like you said, we're building on that mission, that long-term mission of like what we're all trying to get to. That's how you get
Yeah.
people to
Yeah.
stay and, believe and, bringing on really good talent.
Yeah, it's so funny because when I called Steven, I said, I just got to tell you how I'm feeling, and he goes, basically, let's just call it what it is. You basically said, well, why don't you tell your team how you feel? Like, that's basically kind of what you said in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, oh, yeah, shit, yeah. I mean, it's such an easy thing to think of, but for me, I find that to be difficult sometimes, like, tell someone how I feel exactly,
Right.
But that communication aspect is what is so important. Like you said, even from just building a culture, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
T5, you look like you're ready to jump through the microphone. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I don't want to take, I'm so ready at the point of this conversation to take such a hard left that I don't want to go, because I'd love to go the hard left that I want to go, but we're going to just yield is what we're going to do. I think the most important thing in the conversation that we're saying now, and I'm going to put you, Sean, back in the hot seat of today in that conversation. You couldn't have had the conversation with your team and said, how do you feel about this? And let's talk through it. And then it would have been inside your head all day long. And that would have directly correlated to your performance today. That would have directly correlated to the performance of the company today and the team and tonight and so on. If you just didn't have the conversation. Like Danny said, it's getting on the Zoom. How you feeling today, Johnny? Well, I feel like shit. Okay. All right. What can we do to help that? Like if you don't have just these conversations and the communication all together, it's going to just trickle down from wherever it is. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why it's important. You got to have someone close to you that you can talk to about these things. Like, I'm so blessed to have someone like Steven where I can just hit him up on his cell phone and hopefully he answers in a few minutes and he could keep me on the ledge, like he would say for me. So
yeah, he waits like 10 minutes there.
It's awesome.
He's like, oh, I'm going to make him wait this
like,
time.
Yeah, there's one more cup of coffee and I'll call him back.
Oh, no. I could tell. I could hear the jitters. But Danny, let's pivot a little bit. Talk to me why you started the podcast and why you got into the podcasting space, what you're doing with the podcasting, and we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, I want to be honest. And one of the reasons why I started it was because being on my end of things, agencies just aren't aware of technology out there and the impact it can really make. Period. It is bad. I went to Indy Tech Showcase last year. It's a wonderful event. And, for those of you who don't know what it is, it's solely based off technology. The reason why the showcase was developed was to get awareness out there and to show agents why tech should be, how it works together, or, where it can fit in. That was the whole idea behind it. And, from a vendor side, it was great because you go there and you have specific conversations, right, about the product or others that are out there that could help benefit them. So it was wonderful. But the podcast itself is literally made to make agents more aware. Like I've just seen this huge hole in the industry of, I'm cold calling a lot, right? I'm talking to agents and they're like, a lot of them are just like, yeah, we just sit on our referrals. It's okay. And don't get me wrong, that's great. It's awesome that you have that. But what type of a culture do you want to build, right? What are your producers doing? Are they actually producing? Or like, and my goal is to make others maybe aware of technology that might be able to support that producer to maybe start to sell, show them that avenue. So that's why I do the podcast. It's to make agencies more aware of other vendors that are out there, and to open that opportunity of like, hey, wait, if I did this, that could support me in doing this action to help grow my business. So that's the reason why. And for everyone to know, it's on the MVP podcast, which is hosted by Mitch. I do a segment called Talking Tech, and it's like once a month, 30-minute conversation. Just actually launched one today with Kiara
Awesome.
Walden over at Hub, and it was just solely about data and like how important it is to use it. So yeah, that's the reason why I started it.
So
Very cool.
again, scratch agents are listening to this, right? Thinking of starting, maybe newer, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to form this question. I'm curious of your standpoint. We hear a lot about, well, the agents are just okay with it, or it's hard to change, or the insurance industry takes forever to change. But then there's folks like Sean and I that I feel are more of like, how is this going to fit and help us? And what the number one problem with scratch agents is usually a financial aspect, right? Especially if you're not starting it with a boatload of money and you have the time and the money to invest in front of it. I'm going to put myself as a perfect example. Sean and I talked about a year ago about Canopy. Canopy has completely changed the game in my agency. And I pushed it off for about 6 months because I didn't want to add another tech tool at the time. I was only 4 or 5 months old. I didn't want to add another expense. I was still getting my feet from under me. Now, I 6 months later, I took the jump and did it, and it completely changed everything. But what do you think the vendors, and I think Indy Tech's a perfect example of this, but besides that, each individual vendor, what do you think the vendors could do differently or improve on to get the message across to the agents of the impact that it can make? And I think one of the things that stuck with me is you're talking about how you can say, this is what the tool can do to your agency, and here's like the impact it can make, not you need to use our tool because it's the best out there and it's going to make you a boatload money, click here and then you're on to the next one. What do you think the vendors can do to maybe open the eyes more of the agent to say, like, this is where this could fit in here, this is where that could fit in there? I hope that question makes sense. I'm trying to
Yeah. And
frame it correctly.
I knew where you were kind of going with it as you were saying it. I'm like, all right, I can see it. It's literally my job to do a better job of showing you how it can make an impact, or what if you don't use this, showing you how it can hurt you. That's my job, right? Like, I have to understand your business better than you might understand at times based off of things that I hear. So I believe it is the individual who you're speaking with over at the tech company that needs to do a better job of understanding your guys' business, okay, and seeing how you can really make an impact there. Or if you don't do it, this is going to happen. So, in the beginning, I was a huge culprit of that. I would do a demo and I'd do feature, and it had no it would not apply to them. And that was my, looking back now, I wasn't as advanced of a seller. I wasn't as advanced of or a consultant then, right? But now, as I've worked with more and more agencies, like, it's like when you go to the doctor, you have a problem. It's my job to identify what that is, and then here's a solution for it, right? Like, that's my job. So I think, don't hate me if you're listening to this and you're a vendor, I think a lot of it's on the vendor to do a better job, right?
Yeah.
But then a lot of it goes into the industry itself, though, about how old the industry thinks and how to do things, how agencies make money. I mean, that's a huge portion of it, right? It's like
Hmm.
I'm sitting on 95% retention. I don't need to change. Playing golf whenever I got a good
Yeah.
lifestyle. So there's a lot of that goes into it as well.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things that I think of now, just from trial and error of different things I've tried at the agency related to tech, one of the biggest things I look at now is the time aspect. Is this going to save me time? Is it going to make me more efficient with my time? And let me just use an example, right? I'll use an easy one. IPFS Total Pay. They're not a sponsor, none of that. IPFS. So back in the day, I'd have to do whatever, I'll say the name. I'd have to do like an ePay link. They would pay, money would get
Yeah.
deposited in my account. Then I have to pay the wholesaler. Then I'd have to pay myself. Then I have to separate the fee. And it was just a lot of time consuming. Now, Total Pay, they just automatically email the link to the customer. Customer pays. IPFS sends the money to the wholesaler. They send the commission to me directly. I don't have to do anything. Saves me a ton of time.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of like, and then that's on the most basic level. I feel like one of the things with tech that I think can sometimes get confusing is where a company might say, hey, we have this technology that'll make you more efficient with this certain process. But now you have to have like, a whole nother program on your computer. You got to run it through. Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, exactly what you
Yeah.
say. But guess what? Danny's the first one that I've heard that's talked about the consequence.
Yes.
Like, and so Sean, use the example of Canopy. You were, I remember it.
Yes.
I remember the conversation.
Yep.
You have to use this, especially because of how much personal lines I am. You're like, you have to use this. You have to use this. And now I look at it back and I'm like, well, I should have done it day one because of the process that I had and the situation that I'm in and all of that. But at no point have I really remembered a vendor saying, like, if you don't do this, here's the type of experience maybe your clients are going to have. The phone call usually goes, how do you get your leads, or how do you get your referrals? By our system, we can 10x it for you. Although that sounds great, but if you don't, this is clunky for the client. Or like, Danny, can you talk a little bit more on Indy Tech? Because I know I looked at that, and I think it's a fantastic idea. But one question I have is, again, I want to be understanding of the scratch agents that are listening to this that don't have thousands of dollars a month to invest in technology, but are willing to invest in the technology that makes sense and works for them. So is Indy Tech more of, and again, I've never been and have no experience, is Indy Tech more of like a, here's what the technologies are, go talk to them and see if it fits, or do they help you walk through that journey and they help you find out if it's a right fit, when it's a right fit? I'm just curious how that works, because I mean, that's the key for scratch agents, is when does that shiny object, we call it, make sense to implement? And like to Sean's point, does it solve the problem, and does it solve the time that it's going to take for me growing, for me to, let's be honest, does it solve the time that it's going to make for me to hold off getting a paycheck because I've invested in this technology instead of taking a paycheck as starting a scratch agent? I mean,
I so wish Indy Tech could be like, hey, if you use this product, you'll save 17 and a half hours.
Yeah, right.
There was just like a perfect formula.
Yeah. It's add up in the math for you. But yeah, just talk a little bit more about that if you can.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take a step back there and go into it as I start from the ground. I think that by working with agents today, if I'm a scratch agent, you need to find your lane, stick to that lane, build data off that about what your close rate looks like data around like how many calls it takes to build good data. After that, find the technology that supports your success. Okay, I'm going to say that one more time because it's really important. Find the technology that supports your success. So in the industry today, we're told you need a management system today. Right? Well, yeah, I need a management system if I'm writing a lot of personal lines because the Ivans downloads and stuff. Yeah, of course. If I'm writing excess and surplus, though, maybe you should start off with maybe a CRM and then another tool that helps manage all that scheduled data, right? And you can say, well, Danny, a management system does that. Okay, I hear you. All right, you can argue that. How well does it do it there? There's other tools I know out there that do it way better than a management system today. I know for a fact. So Indy Tech, as if you guys go to it, right, makes you aware of other tools out there to help supplement what your goal as a business is. Yes, I'm not gonna lie. There's a shiny object syndrome. There's stuff that's exciting out there. It's like I just saw these new VR goggles. You see the new ones with like Apple, or it's like Apple. You guys know what I'm talking? Is it Apple or
Yeah.
Google? Which one is
Yeah,
it?
the Vision.
I think it's Apple.
Apple Vision.
Dude, those things
Yeah.
are absurd. I was sitting down.
Sean, put them on. Show us.
Oh,
You
Sean's
see
got a
that?
pair. Oh shoot.
No, I don't.
No.
I don't. But I've seen the videos of the guys like there was a video of a guy driving a Tesla. Well, I shouldn't say driving. He was just leaned back with the Vision Pros on
I saw that.
as the cars on the highway.
It's awesome. But like, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, there will be vendors that come through Indy Tech that people will get drawn to. But
Yeah.
the conversations are different. When we go to, I've been at other trade shows. I'm not going to call anyone out because I think all of them are great, but all of them have different purpose. The vendors are there and they sit on the outside, right? And they're like going to talk to the agent, and the agent's like, dude, I don't want to talk to you, right? When you go to Indy Tech, you are there solely for technology. And it is our job as a vendor to listen and to advise who else you should go to in the area. That's the showcase itself. That's what it does. And it's all around tech, right? Because it's making other agencies aware, and then listening, and then pushing off to a vendor that can help you solve that. That's what the showcase does. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and like I said, I haven't been. I was considering it, and I just think that that's such a different model, and that can be so good for scratch agents because it can give them the opportunity, like to you say, oh, all right, well maybe you have to go talk to vendor A and talk to vendor D, and maybe B is a good idea, but not right now from where we're having this conversation, and that kind of gives you a roadmap of how you can set things up, because again, it's a balance between does it make sense now, and what's the ROI going to be, and what's the time saving going to be, and what's it going to provide. So I think that's an excellent opportunity.
Yeah. Let me add one thing in there as a guy that's made many mistakes with technology. I would advise any scratch agent out there, the vendors are going to hate me for this. I would advise any scratch agent out there to give yourself a week or two before you make any decision. If you're excited about something, I know you want to act fast and you want to implement it as soon as possible. Give yourself a week or two. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to kill you. But what you'll find is after a week or two, you might not be as excited about the product as you initially were. And you might have some more questions to ask. And you might not even go with the technology because you realized, oh, crap, I was just super excited in the moment. Danny was freaking awesome. I just want to work with Danny. And now I realize, oh, crap, I was just buying Danny. I wasn't even buying the product, So, like, just little things like that. Just I would keep that in mind moving. That's something I try to do now moving forward because I find myself, I get excited. I just want to pull the trigger and move fast and get on to the next thing. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah,
As
you
a
should
guy who's been
evaluate.
stuck in many contracts.
No, yeah, you're good. I mean, you should
Exactly.
evaluate, and that's why I lean it back to you need to literally evaluate if this is aligning with your goal. Seriously.
Yeah. 100%.
I'm biased because I sell tech, right? And obviously, there's times where you
Yeah,
try
yeah.
to wiggle that into, oh, here's your goals, but I just truly believe, like, if when you go through as a tech vendor, you're listening to what problems that you're having, and and you get really good at like bringing out, extrapolating that pain, right? We all get that. I think you make a good point. You need to take a step back, right? Take a step back and say, okay, listen, he did bring up some good points. Is that really making a huge impact on my business or not? So that is a really good point from a buyer standpoint that you should have. I will say though that on being on this end of things, right? Be honest with the vendor. Listen, Danny, this is great.
Yes.
Let's reconnect in a week from now as I sit on this and think about it. Send me over a couple other things. Just be honest with them. You're not going to hurt their feelings. They're busy, right? They're okay. Just be honest and say, hey, let's reconnect in a week and have an honest conversation next. That's really important because it goes both ways, right?
You're
And
right.
if it makes
Yeah, it's a good
sense, it's a
point.
partnership. It isn't a, oh, just taking your money. The goal of the vendor is to impact the business. So, and
Yes. Yeah.
the buyer to meet that vendor halfway there.
It's a great
Right.
point.
Right. Danny, I want to say something and I want you just to react to it. Okay. One of the things that's been
Uh
incredible of no, it's not it's
oh.
not bad. No, all right, Sean, bring out your goggles. Let's see your
Yeah.
goggles. Enough of hiding them. Enough of hiding. No, we talk a lot on the podcast about how incredible it has been. From Sean and I came from similar backgrounds where there were legacy agencies and you had the
Yeah.
horse blinders on and the guy down the street was competition and you did what you did because it's kept the doors open for 50, 100 years, whatever it is, and this is what you did. The top thing that has just been so amazing to me when I took those horse blinders off and started T5 was how crazy it is how different everybody does this. Every independent
Yeah.
agent, how different they operate their business. I mean, you get 50 of us in a room and there's 50 different ways. And I'm
It's
just curious
wild.
from your vendor standpoint, how you look at that and handle that and treat those conversations, because you can have glove box could work very well in my agency, but could not work at all at LAF for different reasons.
That's right.
And I'm just curious. Like, just your general thoughts on that, and then kind of how the vendors take an approach on that.
Yeah, first off, you're correct. Every agency is different. And I do believe that, at least the agencies that I've worked with, you need someone to help implement. It is really hard when you don't have someone that takes charge of the project.
Yeah.
So there needs to be a commitment. And a lot of that, again, goes back to the vendor. Like, you should have stated, hey,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
a commitment on both parties. Are you willing to commit to this? And if they said yes, then you hold them accountable, right? That is, again, on the seller's part as well. Because as the buyer, you're not thinking about that. But you make a good point. I spoke to an agency yesterday. Guy got a referral through a manufacturer, and he's just been sitting on referrals ever since. He just says his producers just manage those referrals coming in, doesn't prospect. And then I spoke to another agent yesterday, ironically, who's like, all I want to do is produce. All I want to do is build a sales process, and they're making 75, 80 dials a day. Referrals are going to come through those relationships, but I want them producing. And so everyone's different. And that's why I bring up in the beginning of always in my intro, I've worked with them all. Like, literally the ones that sit
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
referrals and the other ones that are selling. And so, like, if I get an agency who is sitting on referrals, I have to be very careful, because you don't want to attack how they're doing business. Because, to be honest with you, if they're sitting on a $24 million book of business, they're probably like, we're okay. Like, we've been pretty successful this
Right.
way. So they have to probe a question. John, have you ever thought about your producers going to 100% selling and your account managers handling those referrals? You ever thought of that? And, they might say no or whatnot, but my job is to get them to think that way, right? And then to support. Well, John, I've worked with these brokers that decided, like, hey, these producers, they're 100% sellers now. And they've seen this return on them selling. Is that not something you'd be open to? Right. And then at probes, just so you know, not everyone's like, oh yeah, I want to do that. Because it takes a mindset. Because cold calling's not
Of course. Yeah.
luxurious. It's not like, it's not great. Oh, pick up the phone. What do you tell people at the bar? Like, oh, I'm picking up the phone all day. They're like, oh, cool. But it's not sexy. But the people that do it make money. I'll tell you that right now. But yeah, I hope that answers your question there.
Well, you just took an approach of uncovering problems, expressing weaknesses,
Yeah.
consequences, everything that we talk about scratch agents doing directly to their clients, right? And you saying, hey, John, I know you've gotten millions of dollars in referrals over the last 20 years, but what if it looked this way? Now, sure, your product and your tech tool, whatever it is, can help that, but you're not having a conversation about the product. You're having a conversation of what if it looked this way within your industry, and you open it, or in your agency, and he opens his eyes, is like, holy crap, and you're, oh, by the way, our tech tool can help you solve that problem. And that's having the conversation. The one I love that. The other thing that I wrote down is the commitment of implementation.
Yes. Oh my
Implementing
gosh.
the pro. I, this is the biggest one, because the tool can be so good, but if you only use it 10% of the time, that is not the vendor's fault. That's your fault. And guess what's very hard? Being a scratch agent, being a one-man show, being a two-man show, or three, you don't have the implementer that can say, I'm not going to do renewals this month. Sally's doing them, and I'm focusing on bringing on this new CRM. I mean, I talked to Sean. My CRM just made an update 2 months ago that is going to completely change the way that I operate in the agency for the better. With a partnership and a merger with my AMS and different things is going to completely change the way that I'm internally and operating, whatever, for the better. Great, fantastic. I probably saw the email and probably just unread it or put, because I was in the middle of doing 18 quotes, or saw it and was like, cool, I'll get back to that. But I was on a call with my rep and we were going over it, and they're like, oh, you can do X, Y, and Z now. And I'm like, whoa, hold up. When did that happen?
Yeah.
Oh, 2 months ago. There's a big release on it. This and that. So now I've had 2 months of not having this nice smooth process that'll now be going forward, because, and so I think when we talk about, we wrap up the conversation of when is the right time, what should the tool be, are you able to truly implement that? Because we all know they're not all plug and play.
And utilize it
to the best of its ability.
To the best, which we can all, I would imagine all agents would agree. They have a couple of pieces of tech that they're not implementing to full capacity.
Oh yeah,
100%.
Especially if it's
guess who that's
implementing like 40% of my AMS.
Yeah. And guess who that's on? That's on the agent.
Yeah. That's so.
Well,
true.
it is on the agent.
I mean, that is on them.
But I will, again, it goes back to the vendor, right? You're right. Like the agent always needs to be held accountable, but the vendor, they're always selling. It doesn't matter. Just because the sale went through, that doesn't mean shit, right? Like you gotta keep them for 5-6 years, right? That's the goal. It's a partnership. So it's the vendor's job to always stay in front of the customers. I'm gonna throw this out here real quick. I use a tool called Orem. For those of you who don't know Orem is an AI dialer. Yes, it is AI. That also has a power dialer in it. But I'm using it because, listen, I might be on 4 meetings a day, discovery, demo, and I got an hour to prospect, but I need to hit my goal of at least 75 calls, right? So I moved forward with Orem. What Orem does a wonderful job of, every single day, they send me a report of how many meetings I booked, how many calls I made. So I'm always seeing it. I'm always staying in Orem. I'm always thinking Orem. What they also do is they send me articles. They're constantly sending me stuff, even if it's brief. It's not huge. It's not like a newsletter or anything like that. It's something brief that I can easily read that makes me think about Orem, right? And then we just started with them, but they're going to casually reach out every single month to see how you're doing. That is how you get more engagement of a tool. Hey, John, I see you're using this. Yes. Have you ever thought about this? That's how you.
I will, Danny. I will add to this before Steven jumps in, because I think I know where he's going. So I used a lead vendor recently. I used a new lead vendor for purchasing home leads, and they've done something very different compared to any other vendor I've used in the past. And it's as simple as they schedule a call I think it's like every 2 weeks to get on a call with them. Hey, how's everything going? Do we need to change zip codes? Do we need to update this? Hey, did you know to look at this? Did you know to look at that? And I'm like, holy crap, this is like, and it was funny because at first I was kind of like, oh man, they just want to try to like upsell. Like I was instantly kind of like turned off because I was like,
Yeah.
what's this next phone call for? They want me to buy more leads, you know?
Right. Yeah.
But then like, he explained to me, no, dude, we're just having the call to see how the leads were going over the last 2 weeks, what we can improve or change on, to go over the system if there's been any updates and whatnot. I'm like, that's a freaking phenomenal idea.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were going there, Steven, but
No, it wasn't. Do you want to go there?
Okay. No,
Because I'm trying the same vendor, and Sean's just buying up all the leads in New York State, so I got nothing. But we won't go there. That'll be the next episode.
Come on,
I want to
Sean.
take back on what I said. I completely agree with you, Danley. I want to take back on what I said. I completely agree with you that it isn't all on the agent; it's also on the vendor to have that experience. And I'm gonna put this all out there. The vendor that I was talking about is Insured Mind. My CRM is Insured Mind. They're the ones that made the update. And what I think about, and you forced me to think about this, so I appreciate you pushing back on that. The reason that I found out about this new integration that works well with my tech stack that has changed the complete way is because they follow up once a month.
Yeah.
And they follow up once a month, and they have a rep that you can have a Zoom call with once a month to say, how is the tool working? And guess who has pushed them off for 3 months? T5, because I've been too busy. So So now I took on and said, okay, yeah, I want to figure out how I can tag this for my referral partners and do this automation or this, that. Let's have the call. And that's when I ended up having the call, haven't had one in 3 months, and then learn about this now thing. So it's on me because for the last 3 months I've been saying, I don't have a half hour right now for that. I'm trying to bust these quotes out or whatever. But they were all following up. And she would always say, we just have a call to make sure that you know this, and they offer that. And I so much appreciate that. And I appreciate you pushing back on me because you're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Yeah. It's hard, right? I get it. If I have I have people reach out to me now because I'm doing podcasting. It's funny that I'm on this side of it now. And like, I'm thinking about like, man, I got 5 meetings a day. I'm hitting, using Orem to get those like 45 call or, at least 75 calls in, right? To at least still prospect. I don't have time. It's tough.
Yeah.
And you got to figure out that fine line of like not being an annoyance of like, oh, we always need your time, but just to casually stay in touch. That's where all this is gone to. You got to casually stay in touch, be in front of their mind, but the messaging has to be brief. Or when you meet, it's literally 15 minutes. Like that needs to be it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, if you have a referral code for that Orem or whatever it was, send it over to Sean. I can already tell. Tell he's ready to rock with that.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Danny,
Sorry,
we're going to look to wrap this up. Oh, yeah, that's all right. That's all right.
All right.
Trust me.
He loses it.
Steven's got like 5 of them.
Yeah. Might have been sitting over the corner nice and quiet. We're going to look to wrap this up, but tell us a little bit of what's going on at Glovebox real quick. I appreciate all the conversation, just the general conversation, but talk to us about Glovebox, what's new, what's going on there, and then we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah. So as for those of you out there, Glovebox entered the marketplace as an app, right? And then they went through a complete rebrand. And so there is this huge focus today to really solve the problem of connectivity. And there's a couple things that are coming out here in the future that are going to start to bring that connectivity together through a couple of channels. And so one of the reasons why I joined Glovebox was because of that vision and the impact that it can make for not only your clients, but for the agency. I read a crazy stat the other day. This is wild. I'll kind of leave it here. 90% of just customers in general expect some way to self-serve. Kind of let that sink in a little bit. That was from Microsoft, and I'm going to send it to you guys. That was from Microsoft, and that was post-COVID. They are looking for these ways, and I'm not gonna lie. Like I speak to a lot of agencies who tell me like they have an older book of business, They like to call in. They like to walk in. I hear you with that. Is that everyone in your book of business? The goal of technology is to not, I mean, it is. If I'm buying, I want it to impact my business 100%, right? But the reality is technology itself the goal is to make about a 20 to 30% impact of your business. And I go back to the conversation before of like, and then it's the goal of the rep to make sure that you hit those goals, right? So that's what Glovebox is doing. It's creating the ability to connect all these different channels to make it easier for the policyholder and becomes a cascading effect for the agency.
Very good. I want to tell a really quick story because I know we're cutting on time here, but I started the agency 20 months ago. I've sold 2 policies in the office. And so that's the type of agency that we're writing. The second one, or 2 clients, whatever. The second client was about a week ago. Brokered it over from another agency. She wanted to change, and so processed all that, whatever. Everything stayed the same. And she said, "Oh, I'm going to Florida. Let me know and when the payments and all of that will come through." I said, "I'm going to note in our system that when everything's downloaded, we're going to reach out to you and whatever. We could just take a card payment. We'll take care of it for you, whatever." Okay, fine. So she goes to Florida, whatever. She's like mid-60s maybe. And so I see the note pop up in my management system, and I shoot her a quick email. All set. I went on to the carrier websites and did all that and found my policy numbers and did it. Blew my mind
Yeah.
because I couldn't get her to scan the policy documents to me. She wanted to come in and sit down and go over it, but this is the way that she wanted to self-serve. So like you look at that, like she had no interest in filling out my Canopy link. She didn't want to scan her policy documents. She wanted to come drop everything off, but yet she wants to pay and do the self-serve. So I think you bring up excellent points. Danny, we'll definitely have to have you back. This was a blast. I appreciate it. It was great to meet you. It was great to have the conversation. And for somebody who wants to get in touch with you or learn more a little bit about what you're doing, what's the best way to do that, especially the podcast and all that?
Yeah, you can either just go to the website, gloveboxapp.com, schedule a demo, or just email me at danny@gloveboxapp.com. We'd love just to have a chat and see what's going on in your business.
Awesome.
Cool.
Everybody, we've got wrap it up. One quick announcement, Sean, that I think is important to talk about. Myself and the Telegram for the Scratch Agency podcast got into quite the fight yesterday. We've grown this amazing Telegram community. We had about 45 of us in there. And for some reason, Sean thought it was a good idea to let me go in and try to make a minor change. And I absolutely screwed up the whole thing. And it removed about 30 of you. So the Telegram is still alive. For some reason, something happened and 30 of you are gone. Come back to us if you would. In the words of my dear friend Sean, we love being Scratch so much that we're going to build you back up Scratch again in the community. For those that are listening to this for the first time, it is the Telegram. Go to scratchagencypodcast.com. All it is a big group chat. We have Scratch agents in there that are at 40 million in premium. With Scratch agents that just started last week. It's been a super, super exciting community to be a part of, just connecting with different listeners, different people that are on the show. So make sure to check that out. Again, scratchagencypodcast.com, big orange button on the top, join the Telegram. Everybody, that's another episode of the Scratch Agency Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Do us a favor, like the show, share the show, and subscribe. Most importantly, remember to dig down deep, believe in yourself, and own your own future. We'll see you next week. Take care.